We'll do it live. Any of you guys remember that meme from back in the day? We'll do it live. Bill O'Reilly meme. It's a fun one, right? I don't know if any of you are going to join me live because, again, this is something new, but I'm trying it out again. Last time I went live for Topic Tuesday, I did it on my phone, and the visual quality was definitely higher, but I couldn't see any of the replies. There were people leaving comments, and I couldn't see them. It was too far away, and I couldn't pull them up. So now I'm doing it off the laptop here, and I can see the chat. So the idea is that Topic Tuesday can have live questions and answers. We'll see if it takes off or not. All right, because last week was a experiment going live for the first time, I didn't get very many comments. So I don't have very many topics from you guys for the week, but the topic I have is from Tushar Bahala 5336, who writes, "Hello, sir. May I get an idea of how much time it takes to get to a considerable level in TKD as far as muscle memory and quick reflexes are concerned? I am a newbie and haven't had a single TKD class yet." Good question. All right, audience, those of you who have been listening for a while, how long does it take to get good at Taekwondo? I see there's a few of you watching. Leave it in the comments. Let's see if any of you get the right answer, because I've said it many times. How long? How long? Somebody. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. How long does it take? 1. All right. It's 330 classes, or yeah, 333 classes. That's a joke, right? The truth is, it's very difficult to determine how long it will take any particular individual to get good because A, everyone moves at a different pace, and B, good is a subjective term. Now, I think you can reasonably say that most people get pretty decent by the time they reach black belt. In our system, it's based on an average of 2 classes a week. Students can do more if they'd like to, but assuming you're doing at least 2 classes a week, it takes just about 4 years to get that black belt because there's a minimum attendance requirement and then a technique requirement on top of it. Now, I actually haven't had anybody yet, to my knowledge, do it in less than 5 years. And that's just because they can't always average the 2 classes a week, or it takes them extra time to acquire all of the skills associated with it. But somewhere in that range to get to black belt. And my observation has been that once a student reaches black belt, they have a lot of muscle memory, the reflexes, the things we generally associate with being good at Taekwondo. Can some people get them faster? Absolutely. I've seen some people who are just natural athletes come in and get it in a year or 2. And a lot of times they can be better than a 6, 7, 8-year black belt. So a lot of this comes down to the individual, the way they train, their mindset as they train. So it's hard to give you an exact answer there, but there's a general answer. See, we got some comments coming in. A lot of hellos. If anyone has a topic to suggest in the comments, feel free to do it. I'm very light on topics today. The topic I have that I'd like to discuss with you guys is our brothers and sisters who practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Actually, it's not about them. It's about the art itself and its cultural perception. Now, let me start out and be real clear about this. It's a fantastic martial art. It's full of all the right stuff, you might say. So I understand, to some extent at least, why it's so popular, and I have nothing whatsoever against the practice of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm curious what you guys think, actually, in terms of where the martial arts scene is headed, because right now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is hot stuff. Does anyone think it will usurp Taekwondo when it comes to popular kids programs? Because, of course, a lot of the people who come into Taekwondo do it as children. Here's what's bizarre to me about that, because certainly there are a lot of popular, blossoming Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kids programs, and there's nothing wrong with that. Please understand me. It's a great martial art. But it's very different from Taekwondo. It's, I think, most closely comparable to wrestling. And it's funny because I think it has a whole different mystique around it than what wrestling does. And so a lot of people who maybe considered putting their kids in Taekwondo a few years ago now think Jiu-Jitsu because that's a hot word. But they don't think wrestling. In my observation, and this is just my observation, those are two distinctly very different things in their head. They wouldn't think, I'm going to put my young girl who needs some extra confidence into wrestling, but they'd be happy to put them into Jiu-Jitsu. Now, is that wrong? Certainly not wrong, but understand that not every child is going to resonate with a wrestling-like experience. And I will be happy to explain in further detail, but because this is live, you'll experience some of the weirdness that happens when I record, such as needing to wipe my nose with a Kleenex. So I'm going to do that off screen. One moment. The joys of live recordings. Okay, so we were talking about Jiu-Jitsu and children. Not everyone likes to roll around on the floor and wrestle. And I think that those kids might miss out on a Taekwondo program simply because in many people's minds, and this is just an opinion or observation, I don't have any facts to base this on, but it seems like martial arts in many people's minds who aren't familiar with martial arts has been just replaced with Jiu-Jitsu. If you're going to do a martial art, you're going to do Jiu-Jitsu, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, a lot of people benefit from the structure that a typical Taekwondo dojan lays out as a curriculum, that being a very formal, organized class environment, kind of militaristic, a belt system that they can progress through that's attainable in short durations, at least in the earlier belt ranks, and then having multiple components. So like Pumse is a type of body discipline and a type of discipline in terms of like honing into what the group is doing that's going to be very different, very much removed from the type of thing that you would see in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. There's just not that synchronization, that type of movement. And there's a certain discipline that you would obtain through that, in the same way that you obtain a certain discipline by learning to march, by learning to play an instrument and very precisely demonstrate your knowledge of a piece of music, adhering to a set standard and trying to get your body to do that as precisely as possible. That is a valuable skill in and of itself. It's completely absent in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, at least to my knowledge. Every class I've seen is informal in terms of there's not like a lineup and a charet and a kanye. The militaristic vibe isn't there. And while the movements are very functional, you know, they're great in terms of what you actually do to people, there's not that discipline of movement that you see in trying to get a very precise thing down like you do in Pumse. And then, of course, on top of that, we have the sparring. So we're mixing this duality of athletics. On the one hand, we're trying to get a very precise type of movement. And on the other hand, we're learning to deal with chaos and stress and get the movements that are appropriate to arise in those situations organically. And that's really what Jiu-Jitsu focuses on entirely. It doesn't have the other side. Now, when it comes to just generally building a good life and giving that to children, I think one of the reasons Taekwondo has been so popular for children is the format of a class works incredibly well for young kids. For the first time, many of them are entered into this militaristic type of environment, and they start doing things that parents have never seen before. They're able to stand still, stand at attention. They're able to focus enough to get their body to perform this complicated routine. They do things like break boards, which again require them to stop moving around, focus, and strike the target. Now, certainly some of these things would cross over into jujitsu, but of course it has a very different path at arriving at some of these things. Now, I get that in people's minds, a lot of what they want for their children when they send them to martial arts class is some sort of what they would think of as realistic self-defense. And because, of course, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has just been so successful in mixed martial arts, and it's a foundation of a lot of military training now. Because of that, it's seen as the go-to for your self-defense training, whereas something like Taekwondo is seen as lesser, generally speaking, if anyone knows anything about martial arts. But even if that's true, and that can be debated, even if that is true, there's a big piece that a lot of people are going to miss out on when it comes to building confidence, discipline, coordination that you get from the very disciplined side of Taekwondo that I don't think exists in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not saying you shouldn't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm saying it would be nice if instead of thinking as one is better or one is worse, as understanding the differences, the nuances that each style can offer and choosing appropriately based on those things. And again, I don't think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has anything super special beyond what wrestling has. So I don't understand why it gets so much more cultural attention than something like wrestling, which is usually available through the schools. I mean, I get it. All the famous influencers talk about it right now. Even Mark Zuckerberg is doing jiu-jitsu, right? So I get why it's popular. And I get that it delivers on its promise nicely. I'll give you an example. If you're a young kid, you roughhouse with your friends all the time, right? We've all done this. If you did Taekwondo when you were a kid, you probably used some of your Taekwondo just for fun in your roughhousing. I'm not talking about hurting anybody, obviously, but just kind of goofing around with them. Now, in a roughhousing context, your jiu-jitsu is going to deliver. You're going to be able to manhandle the other kids if you've done some serious jiu-jitsu training. Now, you might be a phenomenal Taekwondo athlete. You can't really kick your friends. Maybe you can motion a kick toward them. Maybe you flick it up by their face. And then they grab your leg and they throw you down and they say, "Ha, I got you." Well, they can't do that if you know jiu-jitsu. And if you use your Taekwondo, you can't actually use it because it hurts, right? So jiu-jitsu is a great way to goof around and dominate your buddies. So you get this my point is you get this very visceral sense of it delivering on its promises that maybe isn't as accessible with Taekwondo. You maybe don't get that feeling because it's harder to showcase it outside of being cool and hitting a heavy bag in front of your friends or whatever. So I get that. But again, I think it would be helpful if people understood the difference between something like Taekwondo and Karate and Jiu-Jitsu rather than going, this is the martial art everyone's talking about and this is what people need to be doing right now. I'd like to get your feedback on that. Maybe I'm way off base. Again, I am only kind of just observing things. It's part of the culture right now. Like if I tell people I do Taekwondo, they always want to jump on me and go like, "Hey, have you ever done Jiu-Jitsu?" So it's like obviously front and center. And again, I want to be very clear. I understand that it's a very worthwhile pursuit. So I'm not knocking it at all. I'm just wondering why people can't see that they're very different things. That's all I've got, guys. I know some of you are watching. Do we have any comments? Just some hellos. What are you teaching for today? I'm going to try to do this right about 12:30, I think, Eastern time on Tuesdays, live for a little bit, and just see what happens and see if the people start responding and leaving these messages so that we can get some live feedback going with Topic Tuesday. If not, I'll go back to the old format. I'm just playing with things to see if this is something that offers you guys more value, because I'm always all about offering the value to you guys, right? Okay, hey, it's been fun. As always, enjoy your training. Until next time, think of some topics. And even though this is going out live right now, if you're watching it pre-recorded, leave those topics down below because I want to hear them for next time. And we'll have more to talk about. All right, guys. See you later.